I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best.
Okay, here's the plan. I will read the whole article from Boxing Scene. I will not add my take. I will just read out what the WBC have to say, and then I will listen back to my video because it won't be prejudiced by my opinion. I will listen to what you have to say in the comment section, and there'll be a follow-up video. And it won't be just me. We're going to have a few people talking on it. Maybe a hangout format. So, here we go. World Boxing Council. 1. Background. The WBC Heavyweight Championship of the World was scheduled to be contested on May the 21st this year in Russia. The bout was between Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, and the mandatory defense of his title against Alexander Povetkin. The bout was the result of a purse bid the WBC conducted, which Povetkin's promoter Shabrinsky, or whatever his name is, won. On May the 13th, 2016, VADA reported to the WBC that Alexander Povetkin's anti-doping tests that had been taken from his April the 27th, 2016 sample pursuant to the WBC clean boxing program yielded an adverse finding for the banned substance meldonium. In light of Mr. Povetkin's adverse finding, the WBC took the following steps. A. In order to protect the CBP and the name of safety, lifted the sanctioning of the bout, which resulted in the bout being suspended. B. Afforded champion Wilder a voluntary defense of his title in order to keep him active. C. Assembled an emergency review committee. D. As part of its internal investigation, held inquiry meetings with champion Wilder and Mr. Povetkin's camps to gather as much factual, medical and scientific information as possible. The WBC's idea all along has been to ultimately achieve an official ruling consistent with the WBC's rules and regulation. 2. WBC Clean Boxing Program. The WBC, in association with VADA, launched the historic CBP with the ultimate goals of protecting boxers and maintaining transparency in the sport of professional boxing under the CBP rules applicable to the situation. All WBC world champions, designated challengers, and the top 15 WBC rated fighters in each weight class are subject to random, year-round, unannounced testing for performance-enhanced drugs, PEDs, and prohibited methods. The CBP program also includes testing on specific fights, voluntary fights, and voluntary fighters. 2. WBC Clean Boxing Program. The WBC, in association with VADA, launched the historic CBP with the ultimate goal of protecting boxers and maintaining transparency in the sport of professional boxing. Under the CBP rules applicable to the present situation, all WBC world champions, designated challengers, and the top 15 WBC rated fighters in each weight class are subject to random, year-round, unannounced testing for performance-enhancing PEDs and prohibited methods. The CBP program also includes testing on specific nights, voluntary fights, and voluntary fighters. The bout contract contemplated submission to and participation in the CBP of both champion Wilder and Mr. Povetkin. 3. Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, VADA. VADA is an independent, non-profit anti-doping management and testing agency founded in 2011. VADA is the testing administrator and testing management arm of the CBP. VADA uses only laboratories accredited and in good standing with the World Anti-Doping Association, WADA, and WADA certified sample collectors. VADA's responsibilities concerning the CBP are 1. Determine, update, maintain the list of banned substances applicable to the CBP. 2. Design testing protocols. 3. Administer sample collection through Clearidium, which is a WADA accredited sample collector. 4. Administer testing logistics and sample chain of custody. And 5. Report results of each test. 4. World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and relationship with the CBP. WADA was established in 1999 as an international independent agency. Its key activities include scientific research, education, development of anti-doping capacities, and monitoring of the World Anti-Doping Code. The WADA Code was designed to harmonize anti-doping policies in all sports in all countries. For general information on WADA, please visit the WADA website. WADA's role in anti-doping testing around the world can be summarized as follows. WADA accredits the testing laboratories and sample collection organizations that independent agencies like VADA use for human doping control sample analysis. 2. WADA creates, maintains, and updates the list of banned substances which sports programs and organizations around the world routinely adopt. 3. WADA also conducts studies, including excretion studies, involving banned substances and provide notifications about their findings to the public at large. 4. WADA also provides specific recommendations about the results management of the banned substances to the sports organizations. 5. Meldonium. Meldonium, mildonate or mildronate, is a medicament originally designed to treat patients with certain cardiovascular diseases, including angina, chronic heart failure, cardiomyopathy, and other cardiovascular disorders. Meldonium is supposed to work through its ability to increase the size of blood vessels and therefore improve blood flow. But there is also controversial data, and there is an ongoing debate among scientists and the medical community as to whether meldonium intake indeed produces performance-enhancing benefits during athletic competition. Meldonium came to the attention of sports regulatory bodies when it was detected in the fluids of a significant number of athletes. 6. WADA's policy on meldonium. On January the 1st, 2016, WADA approved the addition of meldonium to WADA's list of banned substances. 2. On April the 11th, 2016, WADA published a notice concerning meldonium in accordance to the WADA April notice. Given that the results of ongoing excretion studies are needed to determine the time of the ingestion, WADA's official position about levels of meldonium found in tested athletes after March the 1st, 2016 was to recommend 2 options at the discretion of the Results Management Authority, in this case the WBC. A. That the athlete continue serving his or her provisional suspension until the excretion studies results are available and a decision can be made and a decision can be taken. B. That the results authority, in this case the WBC, lift the athlete's provisional suspension and that the athlete be allowed to compete. However, if it is later established based on the results of the excretion studies that he or she did take the drug on or after January the 1st, 2016, then the Results Management Authority, in this case the WBC, may change any competition results and penalize the athlete as required. 3. On June the 30th, 2016, WADA published a clarification of the WADA April notice. The WADA June notice originated from WADA, receiving the results from some of the urinary excretion studies on meldonium that had been commissioned. According to the WADA June notice, those results enabled WADA to provide updated guidance regarding the results management and adjudication process to be followed for cases involving meldonium. The WADA June notice also remarked that while other excretion studies are ongoing and remain unpublished at this time, the results of these first studies allow WADA to provide guidance for cases where athletes claim that the substance was taken before the 1st of January 2016. The guidance is determined by the urine collect date and the urinary concentration of meldonium found in the athlete's sample. With respect to urine samples collected from March the 1st, 2016 through to September the 30th, 2016 for concentrations of meldonium under 1.0 microgram per milliliter, the WADA June notice stated that in the absence of other evidence of use on or after the 1st of January 2016, a finding of no fault may be made. 7. Mr. Povetkin's test and results. On May the 13th, 2016, VADA reported that Mr. Povetkin's A test sample showed an adverse result for the banned substance meldonium. Subsequently, that result was confirmed and corroborated by an almost identical test result of the B test sample. The level of meldonium in Mr. Povetkin's A sample was 0.070 micrograms per milliliter, and the B sample yielded a level of meldonium of 0.072 micrograms or milliliters. Those levels were approximately 14 times smaller than the threshold level of 1.0 micrograms or milliliters. This result was registered in the WADA April and June notices. The test was the fourth anti-doping test Mr. Povetkin underwent in connection with his upcoming fight for the WBC World Heavyweight Championship. The three previous tests performed from samples collected on April the 7th, the 8th, and 11th of 2016 had shown no adverse results and no presence of meldonium and no trace of any masking agents. A subsequent test from a sample taken from Mr. Povetkin on May the 17th, 2016 also showed no adverse findings. During the WBC's inquiry and meeting with Mr. Povetkin and his representatives, they acknowledged that Povetkin had taken meldonium between August the 31st and September the 13th, 2015 as part of his preparation for high altitude training. So Mr. Povetkin claims that any ingestion of meldonium would have taken place before January the 1st, 2016, which is the date VADA included meldonium in its list of banned substances. At the time Mr. Povetkin admitted using meldonium, it was an over-the-counter medication. 8. The WBC's findings. Based on detailed research and information gathering, the WBC finds as follows. 1. Mr. Povetkin agreed to participate in the CBP. 2. Meldonium is a banned substance under the WBC CPB by virtue of its own inclusion in VADA's list of banned substances. 3. Pursuant to the participation of the CBP, Mr. Povetkin was tested 5 times between April the 1st, 2016 and May the 17th, 2016. 4. The anti-doping test of sample collected from Mr. Povetkin on April the 27th, 2016 tested positive for meldonium. 5. The WBC is not aware that Mr. Povetkin has ever tested positive for any banned substances, including during his participation in the Olympic Games in 2004 or in the 4 WBC sanctioned bouts in which he has participated. 6. The tests that were performed from samples collected on April the 7th, the 8th, and 11th of the same month, and May the 17th of 2016 were negative for all banned substances, including meldonium and any banned masking agents. 7. The WADA April notice stated that meldonium was a complex substance and there was very little excretion information available at that time. 8. The WADA April notice established a finding of no fault with respect to samples collected between January the 1st and March the 1st, 2016 for concentrations of meldonium under 1.0 micrograms and milliliters. The June WADA notice confirmed that some excretion studies had been conducted but that they were ongoing. 10. The June WADA notice extended the finding of no fault with respect to samples collected between March the 1st and January the 30th, 2016 for concentrations of meldonium under 1.0 micrograms or milliliters. Based on the scientific and medical information the WBC received during its investigations and inquiry processes and on the VADA notices, it is not possible to ascertain that Mr. Povetkin ingested meldonium after January the 1st, 2016. As the CBP's results manager, the WBC has the complete discretion as to whether to impose any penalty to Mr. Povetkin. 9. WBC Board of Governors ruling. The WBC Board of Governors ruling is based on the facts as known to the WBC at the time of the ruling. The WBC is not biased, nor does it take into account any prejudicial perception about the use of banned substances in any particular region of the world by boxers of any particular nationality. The WBC does not issue rulings based on generalities or prejudice, and absolutely opposes any form of discrimination. Based on the adverse findings of Mr. Povetkin's A and B April the 27th, 2016 samples, and taking into consideration that detection levels of meldonium in those samples, the impossibility to scientifically prove that Mr. Povetkin ingested meldonium after January the 1st, 2016, and WADA's notice concerning meldonium, the WBC has ruled as follows. A. In order to protect the welfare and health of the participants, the WBC has called the bout off and reserved any further ruling until the ongoing investigation, inquiry, and evaluation process are concluded. B. The WBC granted Deontay Wilder, the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, the right to make a voluntary defense of his world title. The defense took place on July the 16th, 2016 against Chris Arreola, and Deontay Wilder successfully defended his WBC championship. C. Pursuant to the WBC CPB, will design a specific testing protocol for Mr. Povetkin at Mr. Povetkin's own cost and expense. The VADA designed protocol will commence as soon as feasible after this ruling and will continue for 1 year therefore after. D. In the event that there is an adverse finding concerning any of Mr. Povetkin's samples during the time prescribed above, the WBC shall immediately 1. Suspend Povetkin from participation in any WBC sanctioned events. In the event that there is an adverse finding concerning any of Mr. Povetkin's samples during the time prescribed above, the WBC shall immediately 1. Suspend Povetkin from participation in any WBC sanctioned events indefinitely. 2. Divest Mr. Povetkin from any WBC title fights or any other rights he might have at the time, and 3. Impose any and all available penalties under the CBP without further inquiry. E. If during the course of the pending litigation between Mr. Povetkin and champion Wilder, the court makes a final ruling that differs from the findings set forth herein, the WBC shall have the right to review this ruling and take any course of action it may deem appropriate. F. If WADA issues a notice or changes its policy on meldonium in a manner that would necessarily result in a different ruling in this case, the WBC reserves the right to review its ruling and take any course of action it may deem appropriate.